Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from beautiful Florida. And today our question comes to us from Rev Ed Carr. And Reverend Ed has this question: can you dream of past lives? And if you dream of past lives, how can you tell that it is a past life dream versus an ordinary dream? And I want to start by saying that most of our dreams are symbolic in character. The things that occur to them are representations, usually of other things that are going on in our consciousness, and you should interpret them according to your understanding of symbolism. Some dreams, however, are different forms of spiritual communication, and one of them can be past life dreams. And how can you tell if you're having a past life dream versus an ordinary dream, and how should you interpret it? Well, I think that what you'll find is that past life dreams tend to be very vibrant, they tend to be hyper-realistic, they tend to be very intense. I think that's one way you can tell any type of spiritual communication dream versus an ordinary dream, including a past life dream. I think also you will find that you'll have a feeling that it's a past life dream, and that the things revealed in the dream will make sense in the context of past lives and may relate to things you already know from working with past lives, if in fact you work with past lives. So these would be the two main things that I would say, and the thing to do with the dream is to take it to meditation. And I think you would get confirmation there that yes it is, or no it's not, a past life dream, and you'd get more information if it is. Now, having said that, it's very important to remember in dealing with things like past life memory, as with clairvoyance or any similar situation, that the messenger can warp the message. When we have a past life memory, we're not having a perfect view of that past life. We're filtering it through our memory and through our conscious mind. And that can make more or less disturbance in what we see. And if you stop and think about it, this makes perfect sense, because our memories from this life that we're currently living in can sometimes also be warped. I'll give you an example. I remember when I went back to the home I grew up in after being away for some time, being quite amazed at how much smaller the furniture was than I remembered. In my memory, the furniture was as tall as I was, at least 6 feet tall, if not perhaps a little taller. But in reality, the furniture that I was thinking of, the china cabinet, the bookcases, they were about 5 feet tall. But in my memory, I was remembering them, A, from an earlier time when I was not so tall, and B, possibly also remembering their imposing character in terms of a greater visual size. And I think that people will find, if they examine their memories, that this kind of distortion is not unusual in memories from this life. So therefore, if you're thinking about past lives, how could it be less? In fact, it should be more, and that's to be expected. I'll give you an example from a past life situation. I once knew a woman who was convinced that she was Agrippina the Younger in ancient Rome. And I inclined to agree with her, actually. But one of the things she described very vividly was remembering the house she grew up in. And she described it as having columns so large that it took 8 grown people with their arms outstretched to surround one of these columns. Well, this absolutely does not represent Imperial Roman architecture of that period. It would have to be a distorted memory. However, does that mean that her past life as Agrippina the Younger was not accurate? No, it does not necessarily mean that. It means her mind is filtering the memory. Very often when people work with past lives, they'll get this kind of anomaly. A very common one is seeing candles at an earlier period than candles were used. But it's because the mind is filling things in. When we remember things like this, we remember what's important, not necessarily the stage dressing. We remember the emotional interactions, we remember the gist of the experiences, and even that can be warped on occasion. So if you're doing past life work, follow it as far in as you can, because you may find that your initial memories are somewhat warped. It's also important to remember that the point of doing past life work has to do with the influence it has on your soul and your current life. And that is found again in the emotional interactions and the lessons that are caught up in the experiences, not in the visuals, not in the stage dressing, etc. And past life work is valuable on this spiritual level, not necessarily at an archaeological level. And things I've read where people have worked with their past lives, things I've experienced in working with people in their past lives, are not necessarily archaeologically helpful in any way, and can sometimes be misleading because the mind will warp those details. But that doesn't mean that the emotional and spiritual truth of the situation is not still helpful. So how much should you rely on past life working? Well, in an archaeological sort of way, in my opinion, you should not. However, in an emotional and spiritual way, they can be very helpful, and you can achieve a great deal of personal healing through this kind of work. So, those would be my thoughts on past lives and past life dreams. I hope you find it helpful, and until next time, may you blessed be. Please join me for our Correllian Peace Prayer. I pray for peace. I pray for love. I pray for stability. I pray for the nation where I live. I pray for the world.